She's back. And who's back, you might ask? Well, it's Rachel Zegler. She's back, and she's doing the one thing you never do after a PR disaster. She's talking again. And this would have been the perfect moment, the perfect opportunity to show humility, take a breath, and stop feeding the fire. But instead, she's back out there reframing the whole thing. And she drops a quote that instantly restarts the entire controversy. This is from a Harper's Bazaar interview. And I quote, "Snow White casting Backlash was really confusing, and I refuse to assimilate for anybody else's comfort." One little problem with that, though. When you've already had a public mess, you don't get to act surprised when the internet takes one line and turns it into a week-long war. So today, I'm doing a couple of things here. One, why this is a PR spiral that won't end. And two, why Hollywood needs to learn a lesson. Sometimes the best PR is, shutting up. So let's get into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Critical Nerd. If you like breakdowns of Hollywood unforced errors, PR disasters, and how did they think this would go moments, if you would do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, ring that notification bell. All right, first things first, we got a little context to what's going on here, because none of this came out of nowhere. This wasn't one bad interview. This was years of negative press and unforced errors leading into Snow White. From the moment she was cast, Rachel Zegler was out there telling audiences how different her version of Snow White was going to be, that the original was a story about a girl who just waits for a man, and that it's not 1937 anymore. Not to mention the fact she called the prince a stalker. Weird, all that. Disney fans, well, they pushed back. Then came months of social media posts. Then weeks before release, she essentially told half the country, if you didn't vote the way I did, don't show up to my movie. Well, they didn't. The movie hit theaters, and Disney lost somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 million when you factor everything in, budget, marketing, so on and so forth. So you'd think a year later, the play would be to lay low, do some quiet image rehab, say less, smile more. Instead, we get the sequel. Not a movie sequel, a PR sequel. So she sits down with Harper's Bazaar, and in theory, this could have been a moment. She could have said, hey, I was wrong. I said some things I'd do differently. I want to focus on the work. That would have been the move. But instead, no. Zegler calls the backlash confusing and drops the line. And I quote, I refuse to assimilate for anybody else's comfort. And I need you to understand how the internet works in 2026. People don't read interviews. They read screenshots. They react to headlines. They pick one sentence and start a civil war. So that line instantly splits the internet into three groups. First group says, oh, she's brave. The second group would say, she's arrogant and lecturing. And the third group was basically, please just stop talking. And when you're already coming off a public disaster, you don't get the benefit of the doubt, because the audience isn't exactly hearing context. They're hearing, I'm doubling down. Also worth noting, and I'll keep noting this, Zegler is half Colombian, half Polish. She's mentioned her Colombian heritage approximately 1 billion times. Her Polish heritage? Well, it's still at zero. Apparently, there's no social transaction of being Polish, so that half just doesn't come up. Now, we get to the part that really detonated this online. In the same wave of clips, she starts talking about beauty standards, magazine covers, beauty commercials, movie stars. Says it was very Eurocentric when she was growing up, and that as a young Latina, not a lot of people look like her. And then she says this, and I quote, I have a frontal lobe now, and that's been really helpful. Rachel Zegler was born in 2001. Her teenage years ran roughly from 2014 to 2020. This was not an entertainment desert. This was peak Latina cultural dominance in the mainstream media. Let me just run the list of a few because it's kind of an important list. Jennifer Lopez, not just a Latina icon, a global superstar, one of the most famous women on the planet. Active in music, film, and beauty campaigns for literally your entire life there, Rachel. Selma Hayek, fashion and beauty icon for decades, longtime Hollywood A-lister. Jessica Alba, one of the biggest actresses of the 2000s. Remember the Fantastic Four movies that she was in? Sin City? I mean, she was everywhere. Eva Longoria, Desperate Housewives. You know, that massive TV show that ran for years. Penelope Cruz, Oscar winner, global movie star. Rosario Dawson, Michelle Rodriguez, American Ferrara. And I haven't even gotten to the music yet. Let's list a few here. Shakira, Selena Gomez, Demi Lovato, all Latina, all enormous during exactly the years we're talking about. This isn't deep trivia, and it's certainly not a research project. Jennifer Lopez has been one of the most famous people in the world since before Rachel Zegler was old enough to buy a movie ticket. So when she implies she had no one to look up to, no one who looked like her, that's not just wrong, it's insulting to every single one of these women. People just don't disagree, they pull receipts. And that clip went from 3.5 million views in days because once you're in fact check territory, which, by the way, is a pretty brutal place to be in a PR cycle, because now every new interview becomes, all right, what are we correcting today? Now, this pattern has a name, and we've seen it before. A few years back, Jennifer Lawrence gave an interview where she described herself as the first female action star. The first female action star. Sigourney Weaver in Alien, Linda Hamilton in Terminator 2, Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. They all said hi. Lawrence said it with confidence in an interview. And now Zegler has done the exact same thing with the Latina representation. Simu Liu did a version of it with Asian representation, acting as if no Asian stars existed before him, when Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li were all household names. There is a pattern here with a certain type of modern Hollywood actor. They achieve a level of success, sometimes significant, sometimes modest, and they retroactively erase everyone who paved the way for them. They pull up the ladder. They frame themselves as pioneers in a field that was already built. And the cynical read, the one I unfortunately land on, is that it's not accidental ignorance, it's a narrative choice. Because I broke new ground is a much better story than I was handed an opportunity that came with decades of established precedent. If Latina representation is truly the thing you care most about, and you've made it the center of your public identity, maybe know the history of the thing you're claiming to represent. And here's the other reason why none of this is landing the way she intends. It's not just about what's being said, it's the tone. In this same interview cycle, there are clips where she's joking about being a narcissist, talking about getting stopped for photos at the Snow White ride, saying she was gifted cheekbones from God. Those are her words, and describing people lining up to see her. Now look, celebrities talk like celebrities, and I get it. But after a public disaster, you do not want the audience takeaway to be, I learned so much, and I'm also the main character of Earth. This is what I mean by the me economy. The story stops being, here's the film, and becomes, here's me, here's my identity, here's my struggle, here's why criticism is actually about me. And once you do that, well, you just can't win. Because the audience doesn't feel sold a movie, they feel sold a lecture. And audiences are way more forgiving of a bad movie than they are of being talked down to. Now, a quick reality check before we land this. Criticizing PR, interviews, messaging, tone, it's all fair game. That's what this channel does. That's what a lot of other channels do. But threats and harassment, that's not accountability, that's sickness. And if you don't like an actor, don't watch them. If you don't like a movie, don't buy it. That's how adults do it. Critique the work, critique the PR, but don't cross the line into real world garbage. So here's where I land. Rachel Zegler just didn't have a movie flop. She became a case study of what happens when Hollywood talent can't stop feeding the outrage engine. Every new interview becomes a new headline. Every new headline becomes a new backlash. Every backlash becomes a reason to talk again. Hollywood should learn something from this. Sometimes the best PR move is silence. Drop your take in the comments below. Is this just a young actor being messy? Or is this a career-level PR spiral that never ends? This has been The Critical Nerd. Keep your expectations low and your receipts high, and I will see you later.